I'm Amy Morgan, and welcome to Trade Nerd Legends, a series dedicated to the unsung heroes of global trade. Most people have no idea what trade professionals actually do, and yet they're the reason that our system works at all. They keep our shipments moving, they keep our companies compliant, and the world connected, often without recognition, even though their work touches nearly everything we buy, use, and wear every day. That is what we mean by trade nerd. Trade nerds don't just know the rules, they understand the reasons behind them. They believe that trade at its best connects people and ideas in ways that move the world forward. And that is what keeps them showing up through every disruption, every audit, and every regulatory curveball. And today, as trade becomes more strategic and more visible, more cross-functional than ever, it's time to honor the OGs, those people who've been doing this work for long before it made headlines. And this series tells their stories to celebrate where we've been and inspire future generations of trade nerds. Today's guest is Tina Seale, a widely respected name in the trade compliance world and someone whose depth of experience speaks for itself. Tina's career spans more than 3 decades in some of the most complex regulatory environments in global trade. From aerospace and defense to oil and gas, she's led compliance programs for companies like BP, ConocoPhillips, TE Connectivity, and NASA. Tina is known not just for her expertise, but for the way she lifts everyone around her. Tina has more LinkedIn recommendations than anyone I've ever met, filled with stories of someone who made the complex simple, who explained the why when others couldn't or wouldn't, and showed up when it mattered the most. She's a builder of programs, trust, and people. Tina doesn't just get compliance right, she helps teams grow, collaborate, and raise the bar together. And she's left a lasting impression on a lot of people along the way. So thank you for taking time with me today, Tina.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you and I both got our start in trade back in the 90s, just as globalization was really taking off. And I've told you how I got hooked by the banana wars, and you said it was the hairy coconuts from Mexico that sucked you in. What was that all about? And what was it about that moment that made you want to stay in this field?
I had joined a law firm. It started as a paralegal, basic, you know, office, law office work. And Mr. Hanson, Larry Hanson, was out on travel one day, and we had a broker from down south. One of the brokers there had contacted us. They know Larry and were frequent customers and clients. And they had contacted me and they were like, Tina, we have a serious issue and we need some help. And I was like, okay, Larry's out of town. Let me take the details, get some information for you. It turned out that they had a shipment, which would be a container load full of fresh coconuts from Mexico. And APHIS, which is Animal Plant Health Inspections, it's part of the FDA. And at the border, they check and make sure that
The
everything's right.
USDA group.
Yeah, the USDA
yeah.
group. And so, and I asked him, I said, well, why is it being held? And he said, well, some of the coconuts are too hairy. And I was like, hairy? What is, this is a term I've never heard before. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I had to ask. I mean, I'm young. I was probably like maybe 27, 28 years old. And I asked him, I was like, okay, what is a hairy coconut? And he told me, he said, anything that has a husk, you know, the hairy fibrous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If it has more than an inch, it is not allowed. They sometimes will let you through with 1.5 inches, but most of the time they won't. But they took a collective sample from that cargo. And unfortunately for this broker, it was all over that 1.5 inch barrier there. So I quickly sent, you know, Larry a message. Back then we were still talking on cell phones, so messaging wasn't really all that good. So whenever I spoke with him, he goes, well, can you look into this? Because I'm working with this other client and you should be able to work it out with APHIS and get it passed through. So I did, and I had to research it. I found out more about hairy coconuts than I ever wanted to know. And I know that those laws haven't probably changed since then. Maybe some of the, size of the hair may be a little bit different, and some people may not even call them hairy coconuts anymore. But that's and at that time, before then, I had really just basically been a paralegal, doing the stuff for the custom house broker exam, getting it all, because they did training courses. And so I was doing that. And then all of a sudden, I'm plunged into this world of international trade. I love doing jigsaw puzzles. Whenever I have a puzzle, I need to solve it. And that just drove me to that. And I was hooked.
Of your hairy coconut story, and I learned something today. I think coconuts are probably one of the few things I've never actually facilitated the
And we
import of
did
it.
get them out without them rotting,
I
and
was going to
the
say,
client was very, very happy.
okay. I was gonna say you gotta like, what's the punchline? Did you get them through?
We
And
did.
Larry Hansen is great, so we have to give Larry a shout out. He's been such a great supporter of so many of us through our the last 30 years of our careers. Okay, that is great. So what was it about the coconuts that kind of hooked you? Was it because it was like a jigsaw puzzle, or was it something about the trade? What was
It
it?
was a problem that had to be solved. And so I had to do the research. I had to make sure that I had all of the information that was relevant to the case and um, gathering all of that. And in doing so, it just sparked a fire in me that just has not gone away. I am still just as passionate
Sure.
about trade compliance as I was on that day whenever it just started. It just started clicking in my head. This is why we do this.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
we're bringing in steel, and there's these tariffs on it, and it's because of protectionism, and to protect our U.S. markets. And I didn't understand it until I started getting into the understanding of why. And when I did, it was like this light bulb went off, and
Okay.
it was that light bulb moment, and it was a great experience. And
Man, I wish I would have known you back in my Costco wholesale days. But okay, so now let's talk a bit more about your path, right? So you've had the most interesting path. So okay, it started with coconuts, we get that, but you eventually took yourself into some really complicated export heavy industries like aerospace and energy and defense. And it seemed from an outsider, it looks like you kept going bigger and more difficult, more complicated as you went. So what drew you into those sectors, even as things got more complicated?
I am I'm a very unique person because the bigger the project, the happier I am. But I also like to see projects begin and have an ending. I don't like to leave things dragging. But all of my career moves have been strategic, either to learn a new industry, to accept a new title, to mentoring teams instead of just being an individual contributor. Every step has been intentional. It may not look like it sometimes whenever you look at the overall picture, but that really has been what has driven me. And the more complex I go, the happier it makes me. I mean, I truly love to have those complex, very, very high risk matters that can ruin a company if you don't get it right. And I love to be able to show that we do have value to the company. And the only way I can do that is through getting into those really complex projects and things that people don't want to, it's just behind the curtain, don't look behind that curtain kind of
Right.
work. But I do, and I have to be challenged. If I'm not challenged, and if I start like rubber stamping or just going through the motions, it's time to move on. So
Completely. I knew we had a lot in common.
we do.
But it's funny how a lot of trade people are wired very similarly in that respect. You must complete the puzzle. You want a bigger challenge. You like using the framework of the regulations to answer a question. It's we're rare. We're
We
very
are.
rare. I'm very glad we're doing this. We're capturing this because it is a rare thing. So you are not insane. But I do also know what you mean by some days you wonder, why do I do this? Why do I
It's
know
those high
this?
stress, those days that there's nothing going right, everything's going wrong, and people are just piling it all on you. And you walk in the door having your day all planned out, and all it takes is a phone conversation or an email or whatever to totally upside your world. So,
So you've seen trade compliance work evolve across the decades. You've seen it evolve across industries. You've seen different administrations come and go. When you, Tina, take a step back and you look at where we are right now, what do you make of what's going on?
if you go back and you look at history, it really, we've been there, done that. And for someone that has, as you would call it, an OG, it goes, back to Kennedy. He's the one that signed the Trade Expansion Act, right? Um, of 1962. Now that was before my days, but he gave the power to negotiate to the president so that he could negotiate trade agreements, not confirm them. And Congress does that. But Reagan, we went through a close. In my time, we went from a close to an open, and now we're closed again. And we didn't always have globalization in international trade. We were very isolated and we didn't serve our own country well. Um, I'm a firm believer in international trade and open markets. Um, Closing up your markets makes, in my opinion, no, it reduces jobs in the US, it reduces jobs overseas. You just need everything to flow well.
Mhm.
George W. Bush signed 13 new trade agreements between 2001 and 2009. And so we have all seen this. So it's not a surprise. The magnitude of it, yes, and we're all trying to adjust, but there is a lot of panic. There's a lot of confusion right now going on. And I think that this is where individuals like myself and you and others calm down. Just take a back step and step back and think about what is going on and realize that, hey, I've been here before. It, there's just a different take on it now, and it's a higher risk game now.
Yeah, it's weird to think that we'll be recovering from this moment for who
It's going to
knows
be a
how
long
long.
time.
But what you said was also really interesting, where it's our role right now to kind of help calm everybody down, talk about how we've been here before. We've seen this movie. We know
Mm-hmm.
that there'll be a different movie eventually.
Been there, done that, right?
But what, I mean, you've given a lot of advice to a lot of companies and a lot of trade people, right? If you were to talk to all of your trade peers out there and who are all very stressed out, they're all very desperate, they're all very um, uh, I don't want to say nervous. I don't think nervous is the right word, but they're tired and they're
Anxious.
frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
anxious. Exactly. So much anxiety. What would you say, like direct to them, like other than calm down, right? Would you give them any pieces of advice to help navigate this moment?
I would, I would definitely tell them to evaluate their products that they have that are current, that they have going out the door. Start there. Determine what the actual tariffs would be from the suppliers coming into the United States. I would be talking to my sourcing to see what we could do to find new sources in different countries so that we could reduce the tariffs that we would be incurring. And talking to the suppliers overseas, explain, they obviously know the situation, and renegotiate Incoterms or renegotiate pricing. You can have those talks with, logistics and with purchasing and sourcing to begin doing that. But take the products that are the most key to your industry and that come in every day. Start working on those and those suppliers and sources and go from there. Just take one little chunk at a time. That's all we can do. If you try to absorb it all at one time, you will not get anywhere.
That's amazing advice. I mean, the cross-functional aspect, I think, is really important now more than it's ever been before. I talk a lot about how in the before times,
Not
how,
post after 9/11 happened.
right, right.
Right.
but things were relatively static. So our landed costs didn't change tremendously. Our suppliers didn't change. The origins didn't change. We kind of did a lot of set it and forget it. And now people are revisiting, going back to basics, looking at their tariff codes, like you were saying, revisiting their origins and doing those things, but then making sure that they bring their cross-functional teams along for that ride. I think that's really great advice. Um, okay, so now I have a few questions that I ask everybody. And if we've ever met at a conference and had small talk, and I would have asked you these same questions as well. So it's kind of a tradition I'm bringing to this platform because I think they're kind of fun questions. So every trade nerd has that one thing. Maybe it was a product or it was a specific tariff code or a moment that they'll never forget. And I want to know, what is your one thing?
The FLIR night vision goggles. They have been a headache for me because every pilot, they love to fly with them. They love to use them in various different projects, etc. When I just found out through a conversation talking to someone, and I was like, okay, what is that like? Because it's kind of blind out conditions. How can you see? And they're like, well, we use night vision. I was like, you do? I was like, where, just out of curiosity, where do you get those night vision goggles from? Oh, we just pack them in our stuff and we take them. I was like, oh my gosh. They would always give me with a surprise about those night vision goggles. So that's my one item that just, it is the bane of my existence.
Okay, so my next question then is, what excites you about the future of global trade work, and what do you think that the next generation of trade nerds will need to be ready for?
What excites me is what's going on right now. Um,
Mm,
we have this extremely fortunate event, not for the country, obviously, or for our customers and clients, but for us. This is our time to get to that C-suite, talk to those CEOs and presidents and heads of the company, because all of a sudden, everybody and their brother wants to know about tariffs. We're no longer going to be having to stay in the back of the building because they don't know where to put you. You're just this little buzz in their ear that is a little like annoying gnat. But you've got the power now, and you can use that, and you can truly grow your career exponentially at this point in time, and take advantage of that while you have it. Because I know that so many years you just are pushing and pulling and scraping to get any kind of resources. Now they understand. And it's kind of shifting a little now from import compliance because that's been, heavily taken, but now they're doing export compliance and there's new penalties coming out and stuff. So, and as you know, Amy, those penalties are huge. So you need to get there and say, yes, you have never heard from me because I'm way, way back in like two buildings away from you. But I need to speak with you about tariffs and trade and international trade and what I can do to help you. The future of trade compliance is a promising one. And what I would say to my colleagues and even the ones that are my age and younger, embrace AI. It's not your enemy. It will help you if you take the trainings now, get the basics, understand it, because you will never be able to be replaced. You will always have to be there because the regulations are constantly changing. Somebody's got to put that information into your system, but you need to grow with the change with these times, and AI will help automate your job in a way that we've never seen. We won't have to do all of that classification work. We'll just have to review it. We won't have to do all the paperwork that we had to do. We will be able to use AI for that. Embrace this because it is the next generation, and we should learn from our new and upcoming generation of trade compliance.
heck yes. Heck yes. I agree. I agree. I don't know how we'd possibly ever hire enough humans to handle all the work anyways if we didn't. So,
We
uh,
always have that that need for resources. I mean, every manager, trade manager, import or export you talk to, I need more resources. Well, you're going to have a tremendous resource with AI. I'm not saying that's going to cut out people. And it may eliminate some jobs, but it's going to eliminate those low level jobs that if they work on training themselves and work with the company to learn as they go, they'll be an asset.
I agree. I say that all the time. I always feel like I'm a year or 2 years ahead of what's actually happening sometimes. So my messages don't always land, but I think that's going to happen really fast. I think I talk about how we can use AI to elevate the role of the trade compliance person. So now you're focusing on different, more strategic problems than the retroactive audit function that has consumed a lot of us. So
Yes,
yeah,
audits are one area where you will be able to just get a report at the end of the week and it will do 100%
yeah,
audit
here's
instead of
everything
just a
to look at.
5% or a 10% that you can look at, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So my last question for you. In your own words, what makes somebody a trade nerd?
A person that is inquisitive, curious, has a commitment to national security of our country because that at the root of things, that's what we do. And when you embrace that, and no matter what your product commodity is, because we know straws and pins and all of that could be used as for various different reasons. Pipes can be used as missile launchers. It doesn't matter. Just you have that job, and don't lose sight of that because at the core, that's what you're here for. But I think that every trade compliance nerd is a person that wants answers, wants solutions, and will drive hard to get to them. Um, I've never seen a trade compliance manager that has been, or anyone in trade compliance, period, that has lost that. And I have met so many, and they're all still just as
Hey,
compassionate as I am. They'll preach to anybody.
hey, I think that's really, whenever I ask that question, I always get a different answer. Everyone interprets it a little differently. And I love that, the curiosity, the desire to protect our country, our sense of service, our quest for answers and solutions back to the puzzles. That's why we're trying to bring this series to life, is to highlight these stories, because all of these amazing people who've been doing this job since the 90s or the early 2000s, we've grown up alongside this field, and now the field is changing. And so I want to be sure that we capture some of some of this history about where we came from. And I think this is not only sage advice, but it's amazing insight. So, Tina, thank you for sharing your stories. This is exactly what this series is all about. I know so many trade nerds will watch this and walk away wiser, maybe more inspired. Thank you for being a part of the conversation and for all that you've given this field.